Hello, Love Bay family. I think Tuesday evenings are my favorite evening of the week because I get to spend this time with you. We get to talk about mental health and life in general. So I'm really excited that you're here. You're spending this next hour with me. Welcome to Love Bay's Mental Health Hour. I hope your week has been good. Last week, you know what? The temperature went up to like 18, 20 degrees. And today it was frosty at -5. This weather is driving me crazy. So, I have some guests today, but before we get into that, because I know you all have seen the posters, you've seen on social media hints about today's show. It's the first time I've had guests on the Mental Health Hour, so this will be interesting in so many ways. For me, it means less talking, which is always nice because people who know me personally actually know that for me to talk for an hour is like it's a feat. So, thank you for joining me. I have today two wonderful guests. And I'll just remind you that the Mental Health Hour is for educational and information only. We're education, raising awareness, equipping ourselves so that we can make good decisions about our mental health, about our loved ones' mental health. It's also so that we can reach out to the right people to help us. So always remember that what we're sharing here does not replace your therapist, your physician, your psychologist, your counselor, your priest, your pastor, assuming that they're qualified to help you with your mental health. This does not replace all of those wonderful people. This is just education and information. And remember, you can text us, you can call us, you can email us on 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299. And it's country code 1. Country code 1. So you can text on WhatsApp as well, but you can also reach out on whatever platform you are watching us right now. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you are and you're tuned in, you can also reach us there, comment in the chats, send us your questions on YouTube and Facebook. 437-778-3299, text or call, or comment on YouTube or Facebook. Okay, so today I have some creatives. So I'm really excited about this. I'm sure you can tell. So I'm going to just kind of give you a synopsis of this wonderful, wonderful tool that was created to help us all understand postpartum depression better. It's a movie by Jamal Smart, who has joined us today. And so a couple grapples with the unexpected realities of postpartum depression, a condition far more taxing than anticipated. The narrative explores their struggles as new parents, highlighting the isolation, societal pressures, and cultural ignorance that challenge their resilience. As they confront these obstacles, they learn the importance of seeking help and embracing vulnerability. This powerful journey sheds light on postpartum depression, encouraging open discussions about mental health and underscoring that seeking help is a courageous step towards healing. So, that's the synopsis. The film is called Behind the Joy, and it's about a couple. They just had a baby and they're navigating becoming new parents. They're trying to figure all that out. But on top of that, Postpartum depression is a condition that impacts women sometimes even before they've had their child, but often after they've had the child. And it can last even up to 2 years after the child is born. So it is a very real diagnosable condition. So for some of us, we don't quite understand what it is. This is the perfect time to learn, to understand, to even gather resources and supports. So if you know any new mothers or any new fathers, but it's not always just with that first child. A person can have had 4 or 5 children. That doesn't mean that they're exempt, right? So today I would like to welcome first Jamal Smart, our first guest, who will tell us a little bit more about this film. Jamal Smart, welcome to the Mental Health Hour. It's
Hello, how you
really
doing?
good. Thank you. It's really great to have you. Please tell us a bit more about yourself, a bit more about the movie. Tell us who else you brought to join us here on the Mental Health Hour, and we'll dive right into the film.
Okay, so my name is Jamal Smart. I am the director and writer of the movie Behind the Joy. Behind the Joy is a movie about postpartum, more postpartum depression, psychosis, anxiety, OCD. So it covers a whole spectrum of postpartum. Today I have with me the two lead actors. I have Kakra and Browne, and I have Boby Giddings the third. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to the Mental Health Hour.
Yeah.
So tell us, let's start by defining, first of all, postpartum depression. Like when we talk about education, I myself am an educationalist from time to time. And I always like to start with definitions because it makes sure we're all kind of on the same page. We're talking about the same thing. So, how would you define postpartum depression?
So postpartum depression falls under mental illness for me. It's something that women go through after they give birth or before or during pregnancy. It's more like a chemical imbalance that happens in the woman's brain that makes things like you start hearing voices or you get depressed more because the hormones are high. So it's more of a chemical imbalance and like high hormones that you're acting upon.
Thank you. And do you have a background in mental health? How did you get into this topic?
So I'm the friend that you always call to say, "Oh, I'm having this problem, and I'm the problem solver and stuff like that." So I don't necessarily have like a clinical background in mental health. I'm a good listener, and I like the active listen. So, my community like, because I had my first child, my first and only child at 16 years old. So I had her before anyone else. So a lot of my friends and family will, tell me their stories about when they started having children. And a lot of the stories, it didn't seem like it was them. There was kind of talking in a space that's not them, as in like they want to hurt themselves or they don't feel connected to their child. And recently, about like 2 years ago, my sister, she went to postpartum really bad, and it sparked something in me. Like I need I don't want anyone to feel like how she felt, And just having me to listen to her talk and listen to her like get out all her bad ideas, it was helpful. So I wanted to make a reflection of that, reflection of those conversations I had throughout the whole years, throughout the whole years that people would come to me and talk to me about this. So that's like why I made the movie. It's like a guide.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. So, how did you, I guess, research this topic and write this script? You don't have a clinical background. Also,
Mhm.
you're a man, so you yourself did not go through this. So, how did you write the script? Like, how did you do the researching? And like, tell us your creative process.
So I did a case study of about 30 women who went through postpartum, and
Mhm.
I used their stories to put into the film. And I also work at a hospital And when I was finished with the script, I brought it to the labor and delivery nurse educator who'd been working with postpartum for about 30 years. And I gave her the script and I told her what I was doing, and she helped me put the script more in fact. You know, she told me about the Edinburgh Depression scale. She told me about like you should introduce that she had pre-mental conditions in it, and you know, as I learned that men go through postpartum too. Every 1 out of 10 men go through postpartum. They go through more like postpartum anxiety or postpartum OCD, as in like the slang term for postpartum OCD is like nesting. You know, like everything has to be clean. You don't want to get the baby, you don't want to get the baby sick, or you don't want to be loud around the baby. So like as I went on this journey learning about it, I learned too, you know. So that was like my creative processing of doing the show.
Okay. Thank you. Let's introduce our other guests. Um,
Oh,
so we have Kakra, Nunu, Browne, and Boby Giddings the third. Welcome to the Mental Health Hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Hello, thank you.
how you doing?
I got to watch the trailer and some really great work there. How did you get pulled into this project and what does it mean for you personally? We'll start with Kakra.
Sure, sure. So I think essentially how I started with the process, I auditioned, and looking through the role, what pulled me to this character, what gravitated to me to even audition was this well, for me, new ground that I've never discovered before as an actor. So I don't have any children. So exploring what postpartum depression is or schizophrenia or diving into the health issues, mental health issues that I'm not fully aware of in my everyday life was a bit of a challenge for me, but that challenge drew me to the role and drew like the curiosity and also the passion to tell the story of others who have been going through it. And then um, in that, I wanted to kind of challenge myself to see, you know, what I would pull to manifest this character that I would essentially have no um, physical uh, influence playing or physical um, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Like I wouldn't have been able to tell since I haven't been able to go through the experience, right?
Experience, yeah.
So what I started to pull together is this sense of feeling defeated, not feeling good enough, and when I started to do my own research on what postpartum depression was, it's you know the expression of not feeling heard by the loved ones around you and how it manifests into something much deeper and harmful to a new mother. And, seeing where I could go with that was really, really what called me to the role. And it kind of went from there. I auditioned for Jamal and the casting director, and then he'll have his own renditions of how my audition went. But
I got yelled at. I got yelled at for a straight 4 minutes. I still have the proof.
3.5.
Oh, thank you for
And
clearing
just
that up.
understanding the understanding the range of what a person going through these circumstances would go through. So yeah, that's just a little bit of what brought me here today.
Hmm. Bobby?
Hello. Yeah, so I found the audition on Backstage and I love the concept. So I submitted an audition and he called me in. Um, and I told him how I loved the story and I auditioned again. I actually went through like three different audition rounds. And the the third one, he let me know that I got the role. And so what drew me to this project was, like I said, the story. Um, I thought it was one that, is not often told, not widely discussed. It's, the awareness of it, especially in the Black community, is really low. I believe even after the movie, I started to look around in my family and realize, like, I think maybe that's something that she was going through at the time. And none of us really talked about it because none of us knew about it. Um, so yeah, it was an eye opener for me too as a man. I had recently got engaged before booking the movie, so it was cool to kind of have in mind now to prepare to be the best kind of emotional support you can be, and don't be who John is in the actual movie.
Okay, so tell us about John.
Yes, tell us about John, Bobby.
John is on a journey. He starts off really excited that the baby's coming. And when the baby gets here, I believe the backstory that I gave myself as the actor was he was just shocked at the turn of events and his wife's behavior and how she was reacting to things and how she changed so much. So he didn't really know how to navigate that. So he's like impatient and pushy and not listening. And also, he didn't believe that this is something that shout out to Jamal wrote into the script. He didn't believe that postpartum depression was a thing. He's thinking it's a easy thing to get over, just get over and move forward. But through another turn of events, he realizes how serious it is. It humbles him, and he's like, "Listen, we need to get help." Essentially, so I think a lot of guys today can relate to not knowing how to navigate uh, emotions that come from a new mother, uh, you know, especially if the woman doesn't understand it, men can barely, understand their own emotions. So that's my take on John.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this movie and from the trailer and what I've seen, it is that journey of going from confusion, disbelief, and anger, and all these emotions at a time when most people, and we romanticize babies, right? We romanticize babies, especially when it's planned and you've been waiting and then you find out you're pregnant. It's always such a joyous journey that is illustrated in TV and movies. We tend to romanticize the arrival of this little creature that basically depends on mostly the mother for sustenance for life. So Kakra, can you talk about Naomi's relationship with her baby?
Yeah, essentially you do see like an arc in Naomi's story in terms of like her relationship with her baby, where initially there's an expectation to when women, I can just speak on it from this, when we talk about the next steps in our future in our lives, we kind of talk about, okay, we're going to get married, then have a child, and
Mhm,
then get this job, and then do this, and then this. And it was kind of like seen as checking off boxes on a list as opposed to the actual experience of childhood and what that means to start to actually experience that journey. So for Naomi, that relationship started off as checking a box on that list,
mhm,
right? I'm going to be the best mom. I'm going to do this, not really understanding what that may entail to the little person that you now have and what
mhm,
that effect might have on you in terms of how you're viewed, how you view yourself, how your loved ones view you. So it became like a stark reality of like, whoa, this is not as easy as I thought, along with any nesting feelings you have of vulnerability. Essentially, when human beings walk through life, I believe, especially adults, we walk through life resisting vulnerability and parenthood, motherhood specifically. You have to dive into vulnerability. So you kind of watch Naomi's story, not just only her relationship with her child, but relationship to now understanding herself, understanding that she needs help. Um, I can only speak as a black one, but we do essentially walk through this world in terms of like a survival mode. So we kind of go, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, not really taking into the fact that we sometimes need to take a minute. We need to take rest. We need to take time to actually care for ourselves because that affects the people around us. We don't necessarily see the impacts it might make, and in that, when you start to kind of get that stark reality of childhood and seeing what it might do, you kind of just go through that space of learning that. And sometimes it's a tough lesson. And you see that tough lesson with Naomi until the point where there is a bit of like a release, in terms of just understanding, like, I need to let my walls down in order to, one, give the love my child deserves and also receive love by the people around me, specifically John.
So Jamal, going back to your research, because we know I'll say relationship that Black communities, but also Black women have with the medical community, especially around fertility, around motherhood. What did you discover in the context of postpartum depression that you felt that this really, really needs to be in the script?
I discovered that a lot of women stay silent through their struggles, or they just, yeah, a lot of women stay silent to the struggles. Because I also did this series called the Postpartum Diaries, where I interview parents, mothers and fathers, and one of the questions is like, did you suffer in silence, or was you vocal? And a lot of women say they suffer in silence, and when they try to talk to like either the older generation or their friends, they either couldn't understand or they was like confused. Like you had a baby. Like why are you sad? Why are you depressed? So I discovered like even like my own cousin. She went through, and this is the type of person that I was like, my cousin Natasha. This type of person I was like, wow, she's like a really strong person. Stuff like that. But then hearing her story that she was suffering mentally, and essentially she just put up mental block so she won't feel that anymore. And it was a real eye opener to the point that when your friends have children or your family members have children, you'll call them and say, "Oh, how's the baby?" That's the first thing you ask. And it makes the mother feel like a third wheel, the second person, like they're not important. The baby just came and they don't exist anymore. So that's something that I discovered about myself when writing it, and I put that in the film. With the scene with Julie, which is played by Megan Farley, the first thing I made her say is, "Oh, where's the baby? How's the baby?" And I had Kakra. She just, she stood there awkwardly, like, "Oh, she's at her mother's." Like, I mean, are you coming for me or are you coming for the baby? So I wanted to put that awkwardness in to show like, this really happens because I've done it. I'm pretty sure that everyone does it because you're excited, you want to hear about the baby, but sometimes you be forgetting about the mother or the father, you know?
And on average, do you know the statistics of how many Black women are diagnosed with PPD? Do you know any statistics that maybe you can share with our listeners on?
So it's every 1 out of 5 mothers that experience postpartum depression. Pretty much every mother experiences baby blues. That's from birth to 3 months. Anything after 3 months is postpartum depression. For men, every 1 out of 10 fathers experience postpartum OCD, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. A lot of statistics are on the website behindthejoy.com, but those are the 3 that I know off the top of my head.
So maternal health is, especially for Black women, is a huge issue, a huge topic in healthcare because we have disproportionately higher rates as Black women than other groups. How does this tie into PPD?
So, one of the panelists from the Postpartum Diaries at the Port Jefferson Library, his name is Dr. Lennox Bryson, and he basically ties into systematic racism and how we are not, when Black women scream they're in pain, they are not taken as serious as they should be. and that's been a huge problem for years and years. So that I feel like that ties into it, and also I work in a hospital. You know, the nurses here, they're here for a job. They do a good job, but they don't know you as intimately as a midwife that you will hire or a doula that you'll hire. They clock in and clock out, and they have shifts and stuff like that. So I feel like getting a doula, getting a midwife will really help curve that, and that's not really known about doulas and midwives. So I think that can really help postpartum depression also.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if I can kind of add into that. I think as you add on, there is the components of systematic racism, but then also from a cultural perspective. So I'm a Ghanaian American, right? My mother came from Ghana, my father came from Ghana. Um, so I would say I'm a testament to kind of seeing like an older generation not really relying on mental health professions or actually having those discussions about mental health. Usually when it says, "Hey, I need to talk to someone," it's usually like it's kind of uh, pushed away to therapy or things like that. Um, and it's not necessarily in my household, right? It's in a bunch of different households. I speak and pass across a bunch of people in the Caribbean as well as on the African diaspora, wherever it lies. And I've noticed a trend of this, like an older generation kind of speaking to. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's just African, like Ghanaian Americans or Caribbean. I think it's also in the African American household where it's not really encouraged to seek mental health or to look into it or to go and talk about, such things or, be vulnerable in that stage. It might also tie in, I feel like all of it does package together into systematic racism because circumstantially, when you look around, you always kind of need to be in survival mode. There's no time for that. You got to keep moving. You got to, like, no one's going to give you pity. So we have to gear you for what the world's going to do to you. We need to put the armor on you, but that armor, at times may not be so helpful. It does kind of create that, and it creates a trend. And what is it called? Um, like traditional, I forget it, generational. You pass off these
Cycle.
generational burdens. Yeah, you pass off these generational burdens or your cycles, and that leads to this never ending um this never
Cycle.
ending question, yeah, of what do you do when you need to simply talk about your feelings. It's just not encouraged in our communities.
So going back to John, how did he see his role from the time, I guess, well, post conception uh, to when they get help? Like, how did he evolve? You said a little bit about that before, but I, I want us to explore the role of the father, but also as importantly of the husband in the story.
Well, I would say uh, him as a character, he was completely lost through, the birth of the baby. Like you said, it was just a lot of excitement around, like, we have a baby. Like, I think that was one of the lines that came up in the beginning, we're having a baby. So,
Yeah.
like, it was just a bunch of excitement, and not enough preparation or understanding. And to Kakra and Jamal's point, in our cultures, there's not much preparation before people start having babies. There's not, much conversation. This is what you do, at least not from where I come from. This is what you do when you have a baby. This is what you do as a husband. This is how you operate as a husband. This is how you operate as a father. I know, personally, connecting it to my own life, I'm on a journey of understanding what all that entails and hoping that I'm best prepared when the time comes. But as far as John goes in the story, he talks about it, which I think is a good way to deal with any of these things, right? The issue is that people are silent.
Mhm.
And so he's talking about it. He talks about it with his friend. He talks about it with his mother. He talks about it with even the nurse. She confronts it. And with the nurse and his friend, he's like, I don't really think that's real. But it wasn't until his mother spoke on it. And because I believe John's a mama's boy, he
Yes.
like, I believe he's like, oh, my mom is talking about it now, and she let him know something that he never knew. At this point, John is in his 30s, and he's just finding out that his mother dealt with postpartum depression, and that there were diapers that he had on that was hard for her to change. So it's like, I'm 30 years old finding out my mother went through this. There's no way I was prepared to deal with something like this. I'm shocked that you dealt with it. And so I believe that was a big turning point for him. And I think a great showcasing moment to the culture of like, parents talk to your kids about how it really was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, I think that's helpful. And then there was this big blow up that him and Naomi had, and it kind of illustrates, sometimes we don't take things serious until everything hits the fan. It's like when he realized how far gone she was, he was like, I need to really like buckle down, lock in, and get my wife help as a husband. I feel like, the thoughts that was going through my mind was, I'm failing
Mhm.
as a husband. I'm failing as a father, as someone that I believe in headship as a man of the home. And so if this is happening, this is under my, on my watch.
Mhm.
So I need to seek help. I need to make sure that she feels listened to because I was failing in that. So I think it was a very humbling experience for him.
Mhm.
And I'm glad to be a part of it because it really did wake up a lot of, things that I needed to see for myself as far as wanting to even be uh emotionally supportive.
Mhm.
I don't think men have that conversation like my goal in life is to be emotionally supportive. Like I can't say I've ever said that,
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my take on it.
So let's talk a little bit about stigma.
Yeah.
How was stigma illustrated in this movie?
I didn't want to follow the typical stigma of baby mama, baby father, and stuff like that. I made this a black married couple. I don't know if Kakra still got the ring, but this is a black married couple. You don't have the ring, don't you? But I didn't want to go with the typical black stigma. I wanted them to be an affluent couple. Kakra, she is a lawyer. Bobby, he's a overnight detective and stuff like that. So I wanted to break the typical. I don't want to say typical because it should not be typical. I don't want to break that stereotype. I didn't want to bring that stereotype into this film. I want this to be. I wanted this couple to be the couple that lived next door that you see like they have everything together, and you never know what's going on behind the joy, behind their beautiful baby. That's how I built this world. So I don't know if that answered your question. I went on a ramble, but yeah.
Okay. And what about mental health stigma? How is it illustrated in this? Because this is something anytime you bring up mental health, stigma is not far behind. And one
Mhm.
of the major reasons people always give for
Mhm.
people not seeking help, not engaging with therapy, like Kakra was saying, is stigma.
Mhm.
So how is it illustrated in this movie?
So with Kakra now, she is a strong black woman. That strong black woman that I don't want to seek help. She tries to hint that something's going on, but every time that somebody tells her to get over it, you get through it, mind over matter, or tighten up, she'll close back up. You know, so that's how I wrote her character. With Bobby now, he's a person that he is quote unquote the group leader. He wants to make sure that everything around him, like, oh no, I got my stuff together. And when he kind of opens up, you know, he wants to see what other people think about what other people think about what he's going through, but not give too much information to not break up the facade that he's putting up. So that's the stigma that I gave Bobby, which is John, aka John.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I try to be secretive of it. You know, I'm not trying to tell too much. I don't want you to judge me because you know I got my stuff together. And
Mm-hmm.
Kakra, like, she tries to be strong, like she's the top lawyer and stuff like that, and she don't want to be viewed as weak and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think when we talk about stigma, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about depression, PPD, for most people, it is not really something that they are aware of. And so that's the value of this movie that you made. You're illustrating it. And that's why I asked, like, how did you illustrate the stigma? Because in my experience as a mental health professional, as an educator, in the different hats that I wear, it's a term that people use, but they can't really identify. Like when we talk about stigma, what exactly are we talking about? This huge, huge barrier to mental health. What exactly are we talking about? So it's really good to be able to see it illustrated, like you said, in the way they kind of skirt around the topic or clam up or don't say anything at all. That's all part of that stigma. They'll judge me. They'll think I'm weak. They'll think I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a bad mother. I'm a bad father, bad husband, bad wife, and all of that. So thank you for that. Yeah, go
No
ahead.
problem.
I think there's something wrong with your connection.
Yeah,
We can
like
hear you.
it's breaking up. Take
Yeah,
out the AirPods.
there's also some
Now,
talking in the background. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Go ahead, Kakra.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh,
Nice and clear.
Perfect. Yay. All right. So one thing I would say that Jamal beautifully illustrates in terms of stigma in the movie is the character of evil Naomi. I think that person literally shouts loud and clear all the negative things a person feels in terms of their mental health. It's literally pretty much what's she's literally saying that throughout the entirety of the movie. So I think that's definitely another way that Jamal kind of shows like that dichotomy between trying to hold everything together, but also everything's falling apart at the same
Mhm.
time. So I think that that was pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
Bobby, did you have something you wanted to say on stigma?
Um, I would just say to Jamal's point on him sharing a bit of information just to like kind of side eye and see what people are trying to say. I think, especially as Black men, there's a lot of men in my family personally, and one of the things that I identified was the amount of pride that men have, and it's a thorn in my side. I'm like, I have to continually confront it because it's really blinding.
Mhm.
And I think that's a major theme, in the movie. Uh, this pride that he has for what he has built in this facade behind the joy,
Mhm.
it's 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 all sort of like uh, just not built on a strong enough foundation because it's 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 blinding him from what he really needs to see so that he can build a strong enough foundation to hold up his family. And I think that's a major thing in just men. Um, if we can let go of our pride more, we can see more of the things that need to be discussed, the things that need to be understood, and the things that need to be built so that we can create a strong foundation for our families and our wives and our children after that. So I would say that that is a big stigma that he's carrying around, and a great reflection of what's actually happening in life.
Mhm. So, Jamal, going back to the interviews that you had with couples, what were the men saying?
The men saying that they felt guilty because they couldn't be there for their wives because as you know, when you have a baby, you're on maternal leave. So they will have to go out all day and they'll come back home like, oh, you spend all day with the wife, you spend all day with the baby. I know you're tired, and you know I'm only gonna realistically be up for about 4 hours, then it's your turn again. So it was a level of guilt that they felt because they really couldn't help the way that they could, and even if they were there, it's just a mental battle that they will go through themselves, you know.
Mhm.
And some women they chose to stay silent and don't even tell their partners, and it displays in different ways and stuff like that. So a lot of fathers, like every time I premiere, like every time I did like a sneak peek screening, a lot of fathers would come up to me and say like, how, you know, what suggestions do you give me to show up for my partner? And I'll give them like little tidbits and stuff like that because I'm not a doctor. You know, that's your job, Dr. Tapo. I'm not a doctor.
But
But
let's hear what you were telling them. Let's hear it.
I would say like, you know, you gotta take your time. You gotta be patient. You know, every day is a new day. We don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, so you just have to have grace and just, you know, pray with your partner, manifest, or let her get some sleep. You know, that's a big thing. Let them get them sleep.
Mm.
Food, encourage them, words of affirmations. If they like, you know, use your love languages and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Remind her how beautiful she is. Like, say how grateful you are. Just speaking life into them, pouring into them
Mhm.
will help a lot. Because, you know, as even Naomi said, like you just like their thoughts in the head like you're a bad mother. You just gave birth. You're no better than a stray dog in an alleyway, you know. And
Mhm.
some mothers actually feel like that. So
Mhm.
I say like give words of affirmation. I'll give them rest. Make sure you find a community to
Yeah.
help her and stuff like that when you're not around. A mother, grandparents, their favorite friend or their cousin or godparents if you have them. You know,
Mhm.
just find a community, build a community. Don't leave her alone in her thoughts because that's when things get bad.
Mhm. So we have a few messages that have come in. I'm just going to read one in particular and then we'll get back to the others. And this listener in Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, says, I lost my daughter from this illness, so this is very educational for me. I'll
Wow.
be
So
glad to
sorry.
watch this movie to better understand it. So let's
Mm.
talk about if people don't get the help that they need in time, what happens?
Um, what can happen if you don't get the help you need in time?
You can harm yourself or the ones around you.
To harm yourself. Been a lot of like serious cases as the woman will dive into those deep thoughts of, you know, strangling the baby or killing the baby and stuff like that, or even hurting themselves because they feel like I'm a bad mother. I can't take care of this mother. This world will be better off without me. Um, drug use is a really big thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Um,
So for Naomi and John, they sought help like just in time. What do you think would have happened if they had not? Like if the
so
yeah, go ahead.
the way I ended this movie, um, they didn't seek help. It was a step towards help.
Okay.
I didn't want to end this movie on like, oh no, everything is fine. You know, we got the help. She's fine. No, I wanted to end the movie like, you know, like this whole series of events had led to them saying, okay, we need help
Mhm.
because in the real world is tomorrow is everything's not going to be the same. You know, it's not the cartoons. Not everything is not going to be okay. We're back. We're back. A big happy family. I didn't want to end this movie like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and the way that it could have ended is, you know, John could have chose to not understand, and that would just create more of a rift in their marriage. And a lot of marriages get broken up because of that, because the man don't want to understand, and they just say that she's crazy or she just changed or you're not the same person, and that makes the woman feel more isolated. And it's like, okay, this person not my person no more because I had his child and now he just calling me crazy because the way I feel instead of just listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what would have happened. They would have just eventually they would have went through more hard times and probably split up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kakra, anything to add?
Yeah. As Jamal was speaking, I feel like it actually does put me in a space of just thinking and leaning into the couples that I know who have children and seeing how some of the people I know become different parts of themselves, a shell of themselves, and hindering in that regret, leaning in and entertaining those dark thoughts of not feeling good enough. So leaning into desperate things and becoming different people, or like their own evil Naomis based on the thoughts and like they're having, you know. I can only imagine like being Naomi and going through the scenarios. If, let's say, I didn't take the crucial step of saying, I need help, or if John didn't acknowledge that I needed the help, I can only imagine how many scenarios would have popped out from there.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi would probably start thinking, oh, he's cheating on me. He's probably out. That's why he stays out long nights. And he might be staying out long nights because he can't really take being around this new Naomi. And then all these different seeds of regret would stem from those places. And that's, if the person doesn't harm themselves, right? So many families and so many couples in the Black community are going through so many different scenarios of this, living in different shades of regret, because they're not leaning into the fact that they might need help, but they're no longer listening to each other, and they're only listening to the dark thoughts in their heads and feeding in and entertaining them. So, thinking, I think the biggest thing, no matter what happens or whatever scenario you come across, is regret. There's going to be long hindering, like remaining sides of regret of not listening to my partner, or not asking for help, not leaning into the community around me, regret not taking the rest I'm needing, or prioritizing myself to make sure I'm okay to provide for my baby or for whoever. And I think even though it's not like all the way in the extreme, these are the little domino effects that can lead to longer term depression.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable to understand as well that, because some people try and wait it out, like, oh, it's just the first year, she'll be fine. She's just getting used to being a mother, or they're just getting used to being parents. They'll get the hang of it and try and wait it out. But we've talked about not getting help here on the mental health hour, like even with stress, and how that leads to something else and then something else and then something else. And we've talked at length about Naomi and John, but what about the baby being raised by parents who had such a difficult time when you were maybe conceived? Because some women, like we said, have it even before they've given birth. And so you have a baby that's growing up in an environment that's not as nurturing as it might have been or could be. This is where we start to see cases of neglect, where I think even on the trailer, there's one point when John is saying to Naomi, you left my daughter on the table alone, right? Like I chuckled when I like my daughter. I'm like, okay, like, but it's that the neglect of the child, which is not willful, right? And then sometimes even physical violence, maybe not to the point of death, but that child is not held gently, is not cuddled to sleep, all of those things. So let's talk a little bit about the impact, both short term for babies, but also long term as they grow. Um, I think in the movie, John's mom tells him about her experience of it, but it sounds like she recovered to an extent that she could be this mother that he now has on a pedestal. But that's not always the case.
Yeah.
There's some
So,
kids that experience violence, an angry mother,
mhm.
unloving parents for their entire childhood. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
So there are studies that a depressed mother can equal a depressed child, where milestones can get missed. You know, if you're depressed and sad, you're not reading to the child. There's even a scene where John is talking to the grandma, and he said, you know, some diapers took too long to change, and there's effects on that. Some meals, you know, I forgot to feed you some meals, as in like I fed you breakfast instead of feeding you breakfast at 8 o'clock. I fed you at 10 o'clock, and you sitting there starving because I'm sad. So a lot of those things can trickle down to the baby. They miss milestones. They're not talking right away, or you know, you're not giving the nurturing that they need. They can get like those little things can lead into so much, as in like rashes, diaper rashes, or
Mm.
just hunger, feeling neglect, or just a child will get PTSD from some
Mhm,
things and stuff like that, because they're little people. So
mhm,
Yeah.
you might think like, oh, an hour is not that long, but to them, hour can mean like it can feel like 12 hours. You know.
Yeah. And to add on to that, one of the longer term things is this child's going to grow up thinking that it's normal, which is one of the
Mhm.
worst things that can happen to you, because you start to realize, like, I mean, we're all sitting, I'm a testament to that at some degree. I think we all are at one point. It wasn't until we opened up a book, being a person who studied psychology in the past, I've been able to kind of understand like the relationship between shock and childhood and how you were raised, and the normalcy of what that child is experiencing, you know, is what affects the child's behavior and how he treats people, how they treat their loved ones moving forward, and how they're ultimately going to treat their children, which would lengthen the cycle, right?
mhm,
So just the fact that they will think, wow, this is normal. I don't know how many times, oh, and I'm really scared to say this. I don't know how many times I've watched like things on Instagram. Like I've watched like rescues of different types of animals, right? And I'm not gonna shout out the pages, but I watched different rescue animals, and when I saw the amount of care and feeding that these animals needed hourly in 30 minutes, 40, they needed milk, they needed this, they needed that. The person who was taking care of this rescue, whether it was a squirrel or a pigeon, you know, I was like, really? That seems like a lot. Not realizing like that's actually the norm for any living being being born, right? That shock value was like, wow. And that's how I knew that, that lives in all of us. That's this
mhm,
tendency to normal, like not being fully treated for or being tended to is normal, and that might be a systematic thing as well, because in our childhood or in our family, you know our parents have to work most of the time. There's not enough for nannies, there's not enough for care. They can't take maternity leave, but maternity leave in the States is different from other places. So what does that truly mean for the child, right? But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest long-term or longer lasting impacts.
mhm. Okay, let's see now our other messages. We have a listener in Durban, South Africa. I feel like you people writing from some of these sunny places are just rubbing it in. Thank you to our listeners in Durban, sunshiny beaches and all that in Durban, who says congrats with this movie.
Thank
And
you.
then we have Jamal, I think.
That's it.
No, it
No,
says thank you,
thank you,
Jamal.
Jamal,
Okay.
from London, UK. And then here's a
Wow.
pertinent question from Yvonne in Toronto. When is it coming to Canada?
When people request it. When people request it.
When
We
who
gotta have
requests
we,
it,
we
though?
gotta have a demand, then we go.
Yeah, but who has to demand it? Like, tell us who your audience is.
My audience, is just people wanna know more. I do want to travel with this film. I had my movie premiere March 14th, and the thing that I did special with this movie premiere, I interviewed people in the surrounding neighborhoods. You know, I got the community involved. I partnered with community organizations at the Post-Partum Resource Center of New York, Women Diversity Network, Suffolk County and Minority Health, just to be a part of the community. So that's what I would want to do. So if there's like an organization that want to reach out to me and say, hey, we want to bring the film to Toronto, you know, I'll say, okay, let's get the people who are actually working in the field in that area to all support it. So it's not just like a movie showing. It's a community event, you know, that somebody can walk away with resources. Like we're gonna have resource tables,
And
and
then
we're
have,
gonna have
yeah.
doulas. You're gonna connect with people within the space. So it's just more than a movie. So that's my goal with it, and that's the direction I will go when I go to these places. So I guess I'm waiting for more knowledge in the next area. I am plotting on going to Atlanta with this. A lot of people from Atlanta reach out to me that's part of organizations that want me to bring the movie there. I'm just waiting. I
Okay,
need to
you
get
heard
some.
that,
I need to
Yvonne?
get some. I need to get some vacation time from job. My job.
Okay, 2 minutes left. Last words from each of you. Starting with what you personally have changed, maybe about your lifestyle because of this movie. I know Bobby's already kind of said engaged, and I'm learning to be a better husband. So
Mhm.
awesome. What else?
What changed about me is the amount of resources that are out there. You know, because when I was first looking up this topic, it was this. I wasn't finding. I found a lot really fast, and I was like, "Wow, this is a whole community within itself."
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just the amount of resources that are there to help, and that's my 30 seconds. Go Kakra.
Thank you, Jamal. Kakra?
Yeah, one big thing I learned or one takeaway from being on this journey was to actually stop and listen and see the signs for what they are. You know, if I see a grimace, or you know, someone shrinking back from themselves, you know, if I have someone on my mind, and actually check in and take that incentive, because everyone needs that community, and you can be that community. That's one thing I learned.
Thank you, Kakra. Bobby?
I guess I'd say my last words would be Jesus can help. Um, Pray and ask yourself questions. I think one of the things that helped me regulate my thoughts and emotions is asking myself, is this the healthiest way to think about this?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is, like if it's my relationships, if it's my job, if it's my relationship to family, if it's my relationship to church, to is this the healthiest way that I can think about this? And if it's not, then you're confronting something which can be tough, and you're going to need to lean on Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you,
So,
Bobby. Yeah, so Behind the Joy,
Yes.
what's the website behindthejoy.com?
Yes.
Okay,
BehindTheJoy.com.
so for those of you who want this movie shown in your communities, and it can be at your church, Mother's Day is coming up. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it can be at your
It could be
I
at
don't
your
know.
school,
Yeah,
at
at
your
your
community.
school, at your university.
Mhm.
gather enough people, it's a great learning tool. I
Yeah.
always love when mental health is actually illustrated in, I mean, not like the exaggerated Hollywood type stuff, but things that are more realistic, because it really helps us learn and to understand. So, thank you to Jamal for creating this resource. Reach out to him, ask for him. I don't know if that means if you want to see it in Durban, you got to buy him a ticket.
Yes, buy me a ticket.
Durban, you
I'm either
got to
over
buy him a
water.
ticket to Durban, and he doesn't
Yeah,
travel without Kakra and Bobby.
they have to
And
come.
Bobby's engaged, so Bobby's fiance has to come.
Got a +1 too. Yes.
So do reach out, behindthejoy.com. Really, really great tool. Thank you for spending this hour with Jamal Smart, Boby Giddings III, Cochrane, Nunu Browne, and Dr. Tapo on Mental Health Hour.
Thanks,
Be
Scott.
kind to yourselves, be compassionate to your loved ones, tell them about this resource. Go to your doctor and ask them to reach out as well. If especially here in Canada, as you were talking, we have community health centers. And they, I think, would really benefit from a resource like this. So, yeah, have a wonderful rest of the month of April. This month is my birthday, folks.
Hey.
Oh,
You will
Happy
not see me.
birthday.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
You won't see me next week, and you won't see me the week after.
You're gonna go to
You'll
Durban.
see me
Oh,
after
Rest.
that.
you're going to Durban. That's why.
I mean, I don't know, these people in Durban, Jamaica, you guys need to send me a ticket. All right.
Send her a ticket.
Good night. Thank you, guys. Thank
Thanks,
you.
All right.
guys.